Is the SEC still the best conference in college football? Please check out my conference rankings released this week at the Voice of College Football. Please like the video, share the videos on social media, and of course, subscribe right here. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live, which is just about every day. Actually, it is every day, either with a call-in show or some of our team-specific live streams across our 24-channel network right here at the Voice of College Football. So please lock it in. All right, I've released my conference rankings, yes, my Big Ten power rankings, and now we look at the SEC. Keep in mind, these are based on the results. This is not my order based on who I think is the best team, second best team, third best team. This is based on the results on the field and the performance on the field. So we started at number 14 in the SEC, and we could have produced this video last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, pretty much any time except for a short period of time when James Franklin was going 9-4, 9-4, 5-3, 5-3 in the SEC at Vandy, or Jay Cutler's quick stay there. Other than that, Vanderbilt's been the worst program in the SEC. And so life is, as usual in the SEC concerning Vanderbilt football at 1-2. They did pick up a win a couple weeks ago, but they actually lost to East Tennessee State 23-3. They did hang in the game against Stanford this past Saturday night for the first half, losing by 13 at half, but also scored the last touchdown of the game with no time on the clock to make it 41-23. So they got blown out by Stanford at home, and now they've got by far the toughest team on their schedule facing them this Saturday in Georgia in Nashville. Vanderbilt's number 14 at 1-2. At number 13, we've got a South Carolina team that was brought back down to earth by a trip to Athens this past weekend, losing 40-16. Starting quarterback was knocked out of the game. Luke Doty had to come in replacing him. South Carolina's got to face Kentucky. They had a couple narrow wins, including pulling one out against East Carolina 20-17. So Shane Beamer, good for him. He got 2 wins under his belt. Now the third one may take some time. South Carolina 2-1, but number 13 in our power rankings. At number 12, we got the Tennessee Volunteers, also a 2-1 football team with a home loss to Pitt, 41-34, a game in which they were down by 1 to 2 scores for the entirety of the game. Tennessee coming off an out-of-conference win, but they've got to step in the SEC and take on Florida in the Swamp coming up on Saturday. At number 11, we got Missouri at 2-1. Mizzou has stepped into conference play already with a key loss against Kentucky by a touchdown. They've got a win against Central Michigan and also Southeast Missouri State, so we've really not seen anything from Missouri positively, but they've got a key out-of-conference game coming up against Boston College. I was a bit surprised that the Football Power Index gives Missouri only a 28% chance of winning on the road against BC. BC, a decent team, but they lost their starting quarterback, Phil Jurkovec, a few weeks ago. So anyway, Missouri, BC, interesting non-conference game between the ACC and the SEC that has been under the radar coming up this week as Mizzou is number 11 in our power rankings. At number 10, we go to Mississippi State, winner in week 1 in comeback fashion against Louisiana Tech 35-34. Then they pulled off a nice win out of conference against the ACC's North Carolina State Wolfpack, dominating the first half of that game. And then this past week against Memphis, on the road, Mississippi State found a way to lose. Did you see this punt return by Calvin Austin of Memphis for 94 yards? Mississippi State down by 4 points with 5 minutes left, pinning Memphis down at the 5-yard line on a punt. Thought they had the ball down. They did not. Austin picked it up and scampered 95 yards for a touchdown. Mississippi State loses. Will Rogers had to throw 67 passes in that game. Well, did he have to throw 67 passes? He's quarterbacking for Mike Leach. So Mike Leach is at least true to his word, true to his scheme, true to his air raid attack. 67 passes, 419 yards from Will Rogers in a losing effort as Mississippi State falls to 2-1. They've got a date against LSU to open the SEC play in Starkville on Saturday. Speaking of which, our number 9 team is LSU. The Tigers, of course, lost as a field goal favorite in week 1 against UCLA at the Rose Bowl, a game in which they were run all over by Zach Charbonnet and company. the last 2 weeks, a couple warm-up games for the SEC against McNeese State and Central Michigan, and now, again, Mississippi State on the road. The Football Power Index only gives LSU a 44% chance of winning this game in Starkville against MSU. LSU's at number 9 in our SEC Power Rankings. You get my predictions on Patreon. I'm 57-15 against the money line, 42-28 against the spread. Please join us on Patreon. There's so much more than that to our Voice of College Football community. It's only 17 cents per day. Grab the link in the description section below to Patreon, or just go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. All right, at number 8, we're going with Kentucky. Undefeated football team, haven't played anybody yet, but almost suffered an embarrassing loss against Tennessee Chattanooga. Had to score in the final 3 or 4 minutes of the game to win 28-23. Kentucky at South Carolina to open. Well, no, they got a win against Missouri. That's right. Kentucky did defeat Missouri. Pretty good ball game. I watched most of it. And so Wan'Dale Robinson certainly proved in that game that he is going to be a force in the SEC. The transfer from Nebraska. Kentucky at 3-0. Unimpressive win against Chattanooga this past weekend, but a key SEC Eastern Division win to open conference play against Mizzou a couple weeks ago. Kentucky 3-0 at number 8. Our 7th ranked team in the SEC is coming off a difficult road loss in Happy Valley in front of 108,000 white-clad Penn State fans. And Auburn took Penn State down to the wire. They lost that game 28-20. Before that, they had obliterated 2 teams. I think it was Akron and Alabama State. So we're still learning about Auburn, but they played rather well at Penn State. How good is Penn State? Well, most people have them placed in the top 10 in the country, so that's actually a good effort for Auburn under Brian Harsin, 2-1 right now in the SEC. In our rankings, they got Georgia State, one more non-conference game before they go to LSU to begin October. So Auburn's at number 7. At number 6, we've got Texas A&M having to play with backup quarterback Zach Calzada. Of course, Haynes King went down this past week in the Colorado game, a game in which the Aggies escaped on the road in Denver 10-7. They've got huge wins against Kent in New Mexico, and now they step into SEC play in a difficult situation against Arkansas. Should be an amazing game. Can't wait for this one. Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Jerry's World coming up on Saturday. Texas A&M is our number 6 team in the SEC. All right, again, this is based on the results thus far this season, not how good I believe the teams are or who would win a matchup. At number 5, we got Florida 2-1. Wins over FAU and USF. And then came the Alabama Crimson Tide to the Swamp, losing 21-3. Florida shows that it's better on defense. It has a running game this year, and Emory Jones isn't awful. They come back, they play Alabama well, they outplay the Crimson Tide, they stop the run, they run the ball on Alabama, and so Florida does lose the game 31-29 on a missed extra point, which forced them to have to go for the 2-point conversion in the closing minutes against the Alabama Crimson Tide. So Florida's got a date against Tennessee. They're 2-1 and our number 5 team in the SEC. At number 4, got Arkansas, 3-0. They beat Rice. They beat Georgia Southern. In between, big win against Texas. How good is Texas? Well, we shall see. They were good enough to beat Louisiana by 20 points. Arkansas steamrolled them, physically dominated the game up front, had to put a smile on the face of Sam Pittman, who's an offensive line coach, of course, by trade. Arkansas, Texas A&M, a huge one in the SEC Western Division. The winner may have a shot at the upper echelon of the division. It's one of those make-or-break games, just like Mizzou and Kentucky. The loser most likely drops to the second division. The winner still has a chance to challenge the big boys. Texas A&M and Arkansas, the Hogs, are number 4 team in the SEC. At number 3, we've got Ole Miss. Impressive showing the 2 times that they stepped on the field against FBS competition. This past weekend, Matt Corral ran for 4 touchdowns. He threw 3 touchdowns. I think he became the first quarterback ever to score 7 touchdowns, both combined, throwing and running, with most of them coming running the football. 61 points against Tulane. Ole Miss throttled Louisville in week 1, and the Louisville team that I wasn't that high on, but a Cardinals team that just beat UCF and beat them 42-35 this past weekend. So Ole Miss, of course, has a bye this week. Then they go to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama in the SEC opener. I've got Ole Miss 3-0, number 3 in the SEC. At number 2 is Georgia. This is a difficult call for me between Alabama and Georgia. Got the Bulldogs at number 2. Of course, they open with an impressive win on the defensive side as they just lived in the Clemson backfield in week 1, winning 10-3. They obliterated UAB, a quality group of 5 team that won 3 consecutive Conference USA titles and is always one of the better teams in that conference. Beat them 56-zip. Then they drubbed South Carolina, held them to basically nothing, 40-16. A dominant defensive effort. Georgia goes to Vandy as our number 2 team in the SEC, and number 1, and still king, still the gold standard Alabama, despite showing some chinks in the armor against Florida in the swamp. Still, you go on the road in the SEC at Florida, and you win. Alabama played a perfect half of football against Miami, leading 27-0 before they cruised to a win. And, of course, Mercer was a non-factor. You've got Alabama coming up against Southern Miss this Saturday before they hop back into SEC play against Ole Miss. That should be rather entertaining in Tuscaloosa. So there's our SEC power rankings. We got Alabama at 1, Georgia 2, Ole Miss at 3, Arkansas 4. Florida rounds out the top 5, followed by Texas A&M, Auburn, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Mizzou, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Vandy. Give us your list right here at the Voice of College Football. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell for the notifications. Join us on Patreon as well. 57-15 money line and 42-28 against the spread. And also, we've got a panel of 28 of your favorite media that also predict the games and all sorts of good stuff there on Patreon. So please join us there. See you next time.